Good Thursday afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone's having a fine time today. Matt and I are going to be talking about a bunch of stuff, not the least of which is the coaching carousel in the National Football League. Matt, it just continues to spin.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you've got guys that have found their homes. You've got Kevin Stefanski in Atlanta, John Harbaugh
Mhm.
in New York, Robert
Mhm.
Saleh's landed in Tennessee. It appears that Mike McDaniel, the former Miami Dolphins head coach, is going to take the offensive coordinator job in Los Angeles with the Chargers.
Mhm.
Off the top of my head, those are the ones that have been filled. I know Baltimore's obviously still looking. Cleveland's still looking.
Mhm.
So three-fourths of the
Pittsburgh's still looking.
AFC North is in search of a head coaching
Okay.
candidate still.
I was surprised. I
Yeah,
saw a
Pittsburgh,
list.
Pittsburgh,
I
Baltimore, and Cleveland. Yeah, all three of
right.
those.
I was surprised at how many people Pittsburgh already has interviewed. That was surprising to me. Um,
Yeah, I
do you have a favorite there?
what the Bills. The Bills are one.
Yeah.
In the Pittsburgh one, no, I have not seen. I haven't seen a lot on the Pittsburgh search.
Hmm.
Um, I did see the update that the Bills had conducted an interview with their offensive coordinator Joe Brady
Hmm.
as a candidate. Which honestly, it almost seems like the movement that they've been doing in Buffalo has almost been like we want everything to remain as like we want to have as much continuity as we can. Really, the only guy they wanted to get rid of was Sean McDermott,
Yeah.
which, in fairness to Buffalo and the reason they made that decision, Sean McDermott was a defensive minded head coach, and for all of Josh Allen's like wrongs and his
Hmm.
turnovers, this, that, and the other, when it comes to the playoffs, the the Buffalo Bills were really bad defensively throughout Sean McDermott's tenure, and that's something that he was hanging his hat on when he got the job. He was a
Right.
defensive guy, and that didn't work out. So as much as I didn't love the move because it felt like a little bit more of an emotional decision based off one loss,
Hmm.
it's one that when you step back, it feels like it still makes some sense for Buffalo.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you're gonna. Sometimes you just have to try and find out what's going on. And for them, I mean, look, you could make that same case for Harbaugh. You could make that same case for Mike Tomlin. You can make that same case for a lot of people.
Hmm.
Just sometimes a change of scenery does not only the team good, but the coach is good. So
Yeah.
you do what you got to do, and I think that it's a crapshoot. But I don't think we've ever had anybody here that has been that good. Um, you know, uh, in a long time. I mean, if you look at the coaches, you got three potential Hall of Fame coaches just standing outside, and forget about you know Belichick down in now North Carolina.
Yeah, I don't think Mike Tomlin's going to return to coaching this year.
I don't either.
That seems to be the general public messaging around it. I know that he went and spent a couple of days in Athens, Georgia, after he stepped down from his position. His daughter's on the gymnastics team, I
Yeah.
believe,
Hmm.
at Georgia. So he's down there. He watched some basketball. Obviously, watched his daughter with the UGA gym dogs. Um, I don't think he'll return. I did just quickly look it up. It appears that Mike McCarthy is one of the ones that they are targeting in their head coaching search, which I
They
think is
meaning Pittsburgh.
yeah, which I think is an interesting case because I don't hate Mike McCarthy
Mhm.
as a head coaching candidate. I just wonder what direction you're going if you're hiring Mike McCarthy as your head coach right now in Pittsburgh.
I don't know. Um, I know they left the door open for the possibility of the return of the number eight in Pittsburgh, Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much of that is window dressing or what. I know the first three guys that they looked at were all D coordinated.
Yeah. Um, I wonder. You mentioned the you mentioned Aaron Rodgers and the potential of him coming back to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I wonder if making a move for Mike McCarthy, if you did hire him as a head coach, is that what you're going after and bringing Aaron Rodgers back? Still, that's not a long-term play. I think that's what confused me the most about the way the Pittsburgh Steelers were constructing this roster this year. It wasn't a long-term play. It feels like they sold off younger, more valuable assets for older, aging assets that would kind of almost signal that you're going all in on a year.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a year or a roster where Pittsburgh could truly afford to go all in with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. He played well at times, but he wasn't going to be a guy that I really think was going to lead you to a Super Bowl, especially not with that roster. And so, again, if this is the route they go down, is Mike McCarthy? Mike McCarthy, you have to have a plan outside of one more year of Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers isn't going to just keep signing 1 year contracts to come back to you. Oh, by the way, he's not the Aaron Rodgers of old. He's not the same old quarterback that he used to be.
Right.
So they need to find some direction that they want to go in Pittsburgh, because right now it feels like they're lacking one entirely, and that's coming from the front office as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers haven't done this in a while, and I think that I talked to some guys in on Pittsburgh radio, and they were saying that there's been a real big push by the family, the ownership, that Will Howard, they drafted him.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we all know that Will got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
They like this kid.
Yeah.
Tomlin does not like rookie quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
The Steelers, if you look at their history, let's go back to Chuck Noll. Chuck Noll had Terry Bradshaw, Terry Hanratty. Who else? Who am I forgetting? Oh shoot. Jefferson Street Joe Gilliam, all before Bradshaw was settled on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Bradshaw actually had a year or two in the league with the Steelers because they kept rotating quarterbacks. And, but then once they settled on Bradshaw, it went out. Then you fast forward to the years of Cowher, and that was a Ben Roethlisberger deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, rookie quarterbacks or quarterbacks that have a year behind a player seem to work out real well in Pittsburgh. And so, let me ask you this. You're Will Howard. You desperately want to play. There's nothing that says, I've seen everything I've heard and seen about Will Howard. A, he's a character guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. B, he can make all the throws.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the head for it. Smart kid. They like him a lot. And the organization figures, if we bring Rodgers back or somebody, that's a stopgap 1 year thing, and let Howard work behind him, because remember, Howard hasn't really even had training camp. He got hurt real early in that session.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe Will Howard is the next franchise quarterback of the team. And maybe, there's a lot of ifs and maybes in this scenario. But if Rodgers is willing to come back, he has been willing to prove it. He's willing to help coach up young talent. Now, maybe that's the rationale of thinking about it. I don't know. But I do know that the Rooney family, they're really big on Will Howard. They're not getting rid of Will Howard. He ain't going anywhere. So, and they were kind of pissed that that Tomlin didn't embrace the idea of Will Howard as much as they had hoped he would.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a right path to go down. I when you look down, I think next year, if my memory serves me correct, next year's quarterback draft class is going to be a bit better than this
Mhm.
year's. I
Yeah,
think by a pretty
at least
significant
at the
margin.
top end.
Yeah, at the top end. So while I understand why you may want to bring Aaron Rodgers back and have Will Howard learn for a year, for another year, by the way, because
Mhm,
he's been on the roster. This is a guy who's been there. He's been learning. So as long as he's physically back, then
mhm,
you would have no reason not to play him. Um, I would question why would you not play Will Howard this year? And if you have a belief in Will Howard, then you're going to make acquisitions around him to make your offense better. Like Jalen Warren's a solid piece in the running back room. DK
mhm.
Metcalf is obviously good, and I think their tight end room's solid, but they're still
Mhm.
lacking something on that
Sure.
offense. And I
An
do
offensive
think,
line would be one of them. Okay.
yeah, yeah, and I do think the quarterback position has been part of the problem in Pittsburgh these last few years.
Mhm,
But why would you not let him start coming into this year? And if even I'm not even like in order for this idea to work, I think you have to be able to strictly evaluate a guy regardless of record. Like you have to be
mhm,
able to go in and look and evaluate who he is as a quarterback and where you see his development over the time that he got there and where he is at the end of the year and like give him a fair evaluation. But when
mhm.
you go through that process and you get a full 17 game season out of Will Howard as your starting quarterback, you know what you're looking at. Then you can go into the draft, and if he was really good that year, then you're probably not going to be in a position to draft one of these guys. And if he wasn't good like that year, and like record wise,
Right.
then then you'll be in a position where you can draft the guy going into the next season or maybe you're in a position record wise where you really like what Will Howard did, but there were some glaring issues around him.
Mhm.
And if you're still in a rough record position, guess what? You can draft help for Will Howard at the top end of
Sure.
that draft. I think there's ways to go. I'm just not sure that Aaron Rodgers coming back is one that benefits the Pittsburgh Steelers in the long run.
No, and I would agree with you. I think what they're doing is holding him in the back pocket just to say, look, we're talking. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't hurt Rodgers, from a standpoint of if he still wants to play, and the Steelers decide, well, wait, we're going to move forward with Will Howard. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't hurt him because at the time, he's got a steady opportunity to be in Pittsburgh. I honestly, frankly, don't see. I mean, he's not going to be a backup quarterback. Rogers, he's not
No.
going to be a backup quarterback. So, could he get plugged in somewhere? Probably. But I don't know. I'm with you on the Will Howard thing. I like the kid. I think he's got hell of an upside. But you never know until you play,
Mm-hmm.
and give him a shot. He may be he's a lot like Bo Nix, so maybe he could be the next Bo Nix. I don't know.
Yeah,
Give him
I
a chance.
think in terms of being a passer himself,
Hmm.
what he did at Ohio State far exceeds what Bo Nix did during his time at Oregon. I think he's a
Hmm.
much better passer than Bo Nix. Probably not as good as a runner
Yeah.
as Bo Nix, but in terms of what he can do passing, especially down the field, stretching a
Hmm.
defense vertically, I think he's significantly better than Bo Nix in that facet. Because I go back, he was really good. Like that Kansas State team, they were considered like dark horse teams coming
Hmm.
in when Will Howard was there. And then he gets to Ohio State in his one season at Ohio State. He's got the weapons. He goes out and he wins the football games and he wins the national championship at that. Once they got things clicking. So he is a guy with the physical tools, and he has done it on the biggest stage in college, regardless of whether he's at Kansas State or at Ohio State.
Hmm. Hmm. And you don't get that opportunity often. Now, the other thing that's interesting on the Howard situation, Howard showed up for his interview with the Steelers wearing a Ben Roethlisberger jersey. Um, he grew up a Steelers fan. He's a Pennsylvania guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a closer to Philly than to Pittsburgh, but he grew up a Steelers fan. So why would this is like hometown kid does good, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you give him a shot, it's I don't see what the downside is.
Yeah, I with that aspect involved, that does make you wonder. Like you talked about how much the Rooney family liked him,
Hmm.
and I would say, based on their pedigree, the Rooney family has a pretty good knowledge of football and
Hmm.
understanding what's going on the field, to go along with all of their knowledge off the field
Right.
in terms of the business side of this stuff. I wonder if they don't understand the roster and this situation that they're in roster wise right now. And maybe that's why they want to bring Rodgers back, because they don't feel like they're in a place where they can plug this kid in to succeed, and they want to see him succeed.
Hmm.
Um, and when kind of sheltering or shielding him from the poor results that are extremely possible with this current Pittsburgh Steelers roster.
Hmm. Yeah, you have a point, and I think that if you're going to get a guy beat up, let it be Rodgers. It's like, don't let it be my young guy, Will
Yeah.
Howard. Let me get the pieces in there as quickly as I can, so as not to get him hurt. So yeah, I mean, I think that I mean, I just there's something about Will Howard when he was at Kansas State, when he was at I was Ohio State, and now with the Steelers. He's just a tough guy not to like, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And his the team, the players love him. His the coaches love him. You know, this is a guy who earned a right to become a quarterback in the NFL. Hasn't taken a snap, even well, but maybe a couple of days of practice
Mm-hmm.
snap. But beyond that, he hasn't. And he should be very well back from his injury.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But the luxury that the Pittsburgh Steelers do have right now is Baltimore doesn't have a head coach.
Hmm.
Cleveland doesn't have a head coach either. And the situation in Cincinnati, they still have their head coach, but the results these past couple of years in Cincinnati have not been up to the par or the standard that they want to set. Especially when you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on that offense.
There's one other thing too, and I think this is worth noting. The Steelers organization, and I've been fortunate enough to be around that the Rooney family worked on coaches shows for the Steelers. The Rooney family might just be the most patient family in all of sports. They will give you time. They don't care about the record. They don't, they want they want the right people in the right places. And if you're not the right people, they'll more than happily jettison you and let you go somewhere where you might want to be the right person.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that Will Howard, with the Rooney family, will have a much longer leash than maybe Tomlin would have. And I think that Tomlin's adversity to playing young quarterbacks might, at the end of the day, have been his downfall.
It's very possible. Now, granted, there's probably some backwards discussion, but Mike Tomlin did step down of his own accord. At
Yeah,
least that's the way it was presented outwardly. Um,
you're
so that,
right, and I should push it that way. I mean, if as I said, Mike's a straight up guy. If he says it, I believe it, and I can certainly see the Rooneys sitting there and saying, "What do you want to do?"
yeah. But in terms of what you're talking about, the Rooney family and their
Hmm.
patience, this is a sport, and this I don't think this is just the NFL. This is college football. This is college
Hmm.
basketball. This is regular basketball. It seems now more than ever that patience wears thin quickly,
Hmm.
across all major sporting events,
Hmm.
regardless of league, what have you. Um, Patience is a virtue. Like it's one of the oldest things. And if you have an understanding of process over results, and you understand what a good process looks like, then in the long haul, it can end up, you're an organization that's only hired 3 head coaches in its tenure as a
Since
franchise.
1969.
Yeah. So the understanding of a good process versus
Mhm.
maybe what the results you see are on the field is very important, especially for the Steelers when they're going into year one of a head coach,
Mhm.
uh, which will be out of the norm for them as a franchise.
And the other thing too is their fan base probably certainly among the top 3 or 4 in all of professional football, and frankly in all of professional sports. is a fan base that also, like the Roonies, is patient enough that if they see any kind of spark, that place is going to be filled up. It doesn't matter if they were, 17-0 or 0-17. They're
Mhm.
going to fill that ballpark up.
Yeah.
So that's something they don't have to worry about.
Hmm.
They're used to the Rooney's way of handling things, which is, as we said, patience. Patience, and you're absolutely right. Patience is a virtue that very few people have. And so I do think that it plays well to a Will Howard possibility, and I do think it plays well, I should say, to whomever the new coach may be. Now,
Yeah.
whether the new coach and Aaron Rodgers are a match, we don't know. Okay, all we know right now is the Steelers have Aaron's a free agent, but the Steelers have an option.
Yeah.
If the Steelers choose not to use the option, then uh, then obviously uh, he can go out and find wherever he wants to play,
Yeah.
which I think is going to be tough to find for the 43-year-old quarterback.
Well, I would figure that if it's not the Pittsburgh Steelers, then it's retirement. And even if the Pittsburgh Steelers come calling, I think there's a very good chance that Aaron Rodgers still chooses retirement this
He
offseason.
could, he absolutely could, and to be honest, it wouldn't be the worst idea.
No, no, it wouldn't. His mind's still sharp, and he's still got the ability to play
Hmm.
football. All that does factor into it, but it's a guy who has seemingly struggled for, I would say, at least the past 5 years, as far as when
Hmm.
I've really noticed it or paid attention to it. I think with his want to play the game, I don't question his love for the game. I question how much he wants to play the game of football. And I think a good portion of that want has disappeared for Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I mean, you can't help but he went from an MVP to nobody wanted him,
Yeah,
and he goes to the Jets where all quarterbacks go to die, and that doesn't work. But you knew that wasn't going to happen the moment he signed the contract. So, the only place, and they kept saying Giants, Giants, Giants. The Giants had never had any interest in signing him. The only thing that they wanted was him to basically play and enjoy where, you know, where you want to play. You want to play here, want to play there, wherever. I mean, he's got a house in Pittsburgh now. He bought a house in Pittsburgh. He's got another house in Montclair, New Jersey. So he it's not like he's going anywhere.
yeah,
Um, he's not going to be a TV analyst, I doubt. Uh,
no.
that's not his thing.
He
Although,
made his daily segment on the Pat McAfee
yeah,
show
I mean, I could see him doing stuff
or
with
his
Pat
weekly
McAfee.
segment.
Yeah, but I don't see that he's not. He doesn't strike me as the guy who wants to be a studio analyst or anybody who hangs around. I think he would probably he's more of an outdoors guy kind of person. So maybe he'd want to go hunting, fishing, and that's about the size of it in the fall. So I mean that's a possibility. So we'll see. We'll see how it works out. But I think that I'm really curious in seeing how the Steelers and the Ravens end up in this rotation of who, because as we said before, John Harbaugh was the only quarterback. I mean, only coach that the Ravens, Steve Bisciotti hired. Okay,
Hmm.
so these two franchises, it's been a while since they've done something. They both hired coaches about the same time, and we'll see. We will absolutely see.
I I will throw this out there because we're talking about these teams that are looking for head coaches and
Hmm.
where they're going. There's a fan base who's recently hired a head coach, and they're
Hmm.
not happy with the hire as head coach, and that's the Atlanta Falcons.
Hmm.
They hired Kevin Stefanski, and a lot of what I've seen online is there's a bunch of people that are really upset, or yeah, really upset with this Kevin Stefanski hire, and the main reason being that they're upset with this hire is that he doesn't fit the Atlanta culture.
Okay.
That's the reason that's been given.
Is he
So,
Brian? Is he Brian Kelly in LSU? What's the deal?
well, it's not even that. I guess and I don't want to go on a long, a long tangent
Diatribe
on
here.
this,
Okay.
but just to keep it short and sweet, my question to those people that are upset with the Kevin Stefanski hire in Atlanta, and because he doesn't fit the culture, my question would be, what is your culture? Because so far your culture's been losing. Like that's what Atlanta's culture has been
It's funny.
historically in
I
football.
was gonna ask you what's the culture in Atlanta?
Yeah, like what are you searching for in terms of your culture? Like he doesn't fit the culture. Does he not fit the city? I don't care if he fits the city. Go win us football games.
Right.
That's the culture that you should care about. You should care about winning football games and trying to make it to the Super Bowl, not whether or not he fits the city culture. It's the same thing that goes back to like Brian Kelly didn't fit the culture. Now, granted, this is a little different, but Brian Kelly didn't fit the culture at LSU, right?
Right.
But if Brian Kelly had won football games, guess what? He would have fit the culture at LSU.
Right.
So the same goes. I People are upset with it now, but as long as he wins football games, then I think the culture in Atlanta will be just fine.
And the thing
In
is,
fact, it'll change. It'll change for the better if he wins football games.
if you just let it go, please let it go.
Mhm.
I I gotta say that you know I think that's funny, the culture. But Kevin Stefanski is a good coach, and I think he will do well in Atlanta. Um, and getting rid of Raheem. Raheem is a brilliant coordinator. He's not a head coach. He's a good dude. He isn't, he's everything that you would want in a coach, in a person. He just can't translate that to the head coaching job. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's
No,
absolutely nothing wrong with that. There are guys who are career coordinators, and one of them just got hired down in Tampa as a special teams guy. Danny Smith. Danny's been he's 72 years old. He's been with the Steelers for 40 years,
yeah, yeah.
and
He's been a fantastic
and
coach.
he's good at that.
Yeah, I actually have a guy that I'm very curious of in Robert Saleh at Tennessee. I'm curious because obviously his first run in New York didn't
Hmm.
go well, but I think it's also fair to say that it's hard for people's runs in New York to go well at this
Hmm.
rate. Like the way those franchises, well, I say the Jets go. Uh,
Right.
so I'm curious to see his results in Tennessee. It's obvious that you can be successful in Tennessee. Mike Vrabel was successful in Tennessee.
Hmm.
They have a little bit, as shocking as it seems like they have a better commitment to winning football games than the New York Jets do.
Um, that's not a high bar to go over. I
No,
think I don't think you could jump it. You could walk over it. But I think the thing about Tennessee is they've shown some patience at times, and at other times they've shown impatience. If they're patient and they let him you decide how the game's going to be played under him, then we may be all in. If you're a fan of Atlanta, you're going to be happy because he's going to be a good guy. Um, I don't I don't get it. I mean, I don't really understand why people get pissed off at that. Hey, that's why they print menus, I guess.
yep.
All right, nothing going on in the portal. In the pre-show today, you said nothing major's going on.
It's pretty much, to my knowledge, I don't think he's announced his commitment, but Duke quarterback Darian Mensah is obviously in the portal.
Hmm.
And the portal window itself is closed for everybody except for Miami and Indiana,
Right,
which they had a new like I think it's like a week long window or something like that opens up after your final game.
right.
Um, so that opened up for them, but I think you've already seen all the movement that you're going to see out of those
Mhm.
two programs for the most part. And in terms of Indiana, it was just Alberto Mendoza going to Georgia Tech.
Yeah, let me ask you, because you keep up with this stuff. Do you have any latest rankings on who did well, who's done well so far in the portal?
LSU did fantastic. I don't think that's any
That
surprise.
doesn't that doesn't make me happy, but go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that's any surprise to anybody. There was a situation at LSU where they kind of like there was a foregone conclusion that LSU is going to take all these superstars from Ole Miss, like all their starters from Ole Miss. And in reality, what they got was Winnie Watkins and Prince Will Unmanmielen. Prince Will's a fantastic edge rusher, one of the top players in
Mhm.
the portal. So getting him is good. LSU has built that defensive line fantastically. The reason that I think LSU will be successful under Lane Kiffin is
Mhm.
going to stem. I get it, like the hype around Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin wasn't successful in Oxford until Pete Golding got there and fixed the
Mhm.
defense. The reason that Lane Kiffin will be successful at LSU is for as long as Blake Baker is there or a equal substitute is there, then that defense is going to be fantastic. And it allows you to take the chances that Lane Kiffin likes to take. And it allows you to run the offense that Lane Kiffin likes to run because he knows on the back end he's got a bunch of stoppers on that other side.
Mhm.
That goes. They did that twofold. They did that in high school with the number one recruit Lamar Brown, and they did it in the portal. They got oh God, why can't I think of his name? Stephon Green out of Clemson. He's a big
Mhm.
defensive tackle. They got Prince Will Unmanmielen as well. They did a really good job defensively in the portal, and obviously they did what they were going to do on offense in the portal. They got Sam
Mhm.
Leonard. They got Winnie Watkins from Ole Miss. They got guys that supplement these pieces. I not sitting here looking at the rankings, and I can't pull everything off the top of my head, but
Mhm.
I'm going to assume that they probably went pretty hard on that offensive line in the portal as well because it was a big issue for them last year.
Yep. And it's one of those things where you sit back and go, hmm, what's going to happen next? What's the next shoe to drop? And we'll find that out in the not too distant future. I think it's we're looking at something quite interesting. Uh,
I what I will add in terms of the transfer portal because like yes, there's a path to success in the transfer portal,
mhm.
that being a way to build your roster. I I don't always love these teams that are, they're number one or they're number two or they're number three, your top five in these transfer portal rankings, because
Mhm.
what that indicates to me is that you have not built a base in high school recruiting on your roster.
Right.
You're pretty one deep at all positions. And you don't have a solid base layer on your team. I'm not saying that you can't be a good team because I mean, heck, Texas Tech is one. I'm pretty sure Texas Tech was one in last year's transfer portal rankings, and they
Yeah.
nailed. But what you do when you're in that transfer portal is you have to nail it. Like you have to nail pretty much
You have no other choice.
when you're taking all of these guys because you don't have that safety blanket of the guys that you recruited out of high school necessarily.
Hmm. And then that can come back to bite you. I mean, when you look at Indiana and what Kirk Cinetti did, there was some situations where they said, well, you know, he was criticized early on because he was portal heavy, and his response to that was, I got a job where I had not recruited before. Not to say he hasn't recruited, just that was the area he didn't recruit.
Mm-hmm.
So believe me when I tell you, as beautiful as Bloomington, Indiana is, and as wonderful as that football stadium is over there, it's not a big one, by Big Ten standards. Um, that's a hard place to sell,
Yeah, but
and you have to show now it's not a hard place to sell.
no, it's not. And they did a really good job in the transfer portal this year too. They actually have the second ranked class. They're bringing 17 in. But again, what are your additions? Where are your hits? And they at least in terms of the guys that are available and what they look like on paper,
Hmm.
they've nailed it in the portal again. I think Josh Hoover is fantastic. I think they're going to turn him into a first round pick next year. Like
Hmm.
I like when I was very impressed with Josh Hoover at TCU. I really liked who he was as a
Hmm.
quarterback. He's a really good passer. I think he got a little wild in his decision making from time to time, and it cost him some football games while he's at TCU. I think the coaching at Indiana is good enough to turn this guy into a top 15 pick in next year's draft. They
Well.
got Turbo Richard out of Boston College to come play running back because their running backs are 22 and 23 years old. Now
Hmm.
these guys aren't playing again in college. They went and got Nick Marsh, the receiver transfer from Michigan State. He was great this year at Michigan State. Fantastic in terms of those back shoulder and 50-50 balls.
Hmm.
Like like they had this year with Charlie Becker and Elijah Surratt. So they went and they filled their needs. And I we talked about it in terms of the success and the way that Indiana was built is whether it be high school or the transfer portal, the one thing that I will give Indiana credit for is they recruit to their system. So these guys, I believe, are going to fit a system and they're going to be successful because they're kind of tailor made for the system that Indiana runs.
Hmm. And again, eh, um, Arizona State did the same thing. They went out, they got a bunch of transfer portal guys, and now they can recruit in Arizona, in Southern California. In some regards, when you're dealing with Indiana, when you're dealing with Arizona State, it's a proof of concept. You
Yeah,
know, I'm the coach. I know how to coach. If I have the players, we'll win.
yeah,
And so I think that's proof of concept. You can't fault them because in both cases, they did really well. You know,
yeah,
and Kenny Denny, we love Kenny. He put together one heck of a football team.
yep, yeah. He absolutely did.
So, and I mean, as I'm not going to say, look, Arizona State is not Indiana, okay. But that being said, it's not they're not a powerhouse football school, although they've had some good teams. But I mean, hell, Indiana started playing football in the 1890s, and this is their first championship. So you got to give them credit in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they've done a really good job. They've attacked the transfer portal really well. Texas A&M. A lot of these, when you look at these transfer portal rankings, a lot of the times what you're going to have is at the top what teams spend the most money. Like
Hmm.
that's typically the way it goes. What I will say is while I think Indiana spends plenty, I don't think they're up there with the Texas and the Texas A&M and
No,
Texas
no,
Tech. Like they don't have the same budget. They don't spend the same amount of money, but they have a much better proof of concept than any of those schools that are paying these players, you know, millions of dollars to come play for them. I One thing that I did notice and I thought was interesting, just as like
yeah,
an overarching note on the transfer portal, is the and this is the numbers that I know for one position group alone. But I'm assuming that this is something that spans throughout across different position groups as well. Is in college football, especially with NIL right now, when you don't have it regulated, there is a market for everything, right?
sure,
The market shift from last year to this year is a significant shift. Like they were talking about last year. You need like maybe $4.5 million to go get the top guys. Like this, there's there's industry believed like this certain tier of guys last year that was going to command $4 million. This year they're commanding six. Like
right.
that's a significant jump from year one to year two in terms of where these guys are at in terms of what they're getting paid. I'm all like I said, I'm all for people getting their money, but you can't have those year over year jumps like that in terms of these guys because if it goes unregulated, then you're at a place where everybody like you're going to run out of money eventually in terms of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's only look. They've got Mark Cuban on their side, and Mark has been very judicious on how to spend. And in many regards, he's done a really good job of putting together the kind of concept of say, okay, look, you know, show me where you need the money, let me help. So he's kind of like been both a benefactor to them as well as a general manager,
Yeah,
uh, giving them, don't overspend here. Here's where we're going to put the money. And remember that that money from Mark isn't just for football. Mark is a massive basketball fan.
hmm,
Hell, that's the reason he went to Indiana.
yeah,
He was at Pitt and transferred to Indiana because he loved Bobby Knight
yeah.
and he wanted to go and watch Bobby. Wanted to go and watch Indiana football basketball.
Yeah, people tend to think like it seems like there's this common train of thought where it's like if you spend enough money, like you're going to. I think really honestly the common belief is that if you spend enough money, then you're going to win a national championship. And I again cannot stress enough how untrue that is. Like Indiana
Mhm.
didn't win a national championship this year because they spent the most money. I don't think they were close to spending the most money on their roster this year.
Nope.
Um, I know that Miami spent a ton of money. I still don't think they were at the top of in terms of total NIL spending. Like I don't think they were 1, 2, or 3 in that. I think they were probably towards the middle part of that top 10 in terms of that number. So just because you spend this money, the same way we talked about the Mets and what their season was last year, just because you spend the money doesn't mean you're going to win. You still have to develop, you still have to build a culture around these guys because a bunch of hired guns generally get you nowhere in terms of a long run in the playoffs.
Well, there's no continuity,
No.
and more than anything in sports, continuity is a very big part of it. And just because you have you know just because you have laundry, as they used to say, on the back, doesn't mean you're going to make it. And I mean, look at how many 4 and 5 star guys um, come out of college and don't make it. Hell, they're not even that good in college, alone in the pros.
Yeah. And when so there are some guys that like it seems like talent evaluators just fall victim to.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm going to use an example that like it's no shade at this guy. It's just one that I have off the top of my head. I remember a guy by the name of Matt Landers who played at the University of Georgia back when Jake Fromm was the quarterback. This guy
Hmm.
was 6'5". He ran a 4.4. He played wide receiver. His only deficit was the fact that he couldn't catch the football. Like
That's a problem.
yeah, like these talent evaluators, especially as you scale up, when they see guys that are that good athletically, like and that physically appealing to have on your roster, they can't help themselves. They think that they're going to fix these guys, and sometimes they get paid more money than they're worth.
More times than not. Um, Speaking of getting paid more money than you're worth, let's downshift, talk a little baseball. Um, the Mets and the Milwaukee Brewers put together a trade yesterday. Um, what are your thoughts about Mr. Peralta going to the Mets?
Yeah, the Mets have won the offseason up until this point,
Mhm.
by my opinion. Like it, it was obvious what they had going wasn't working, and it seems like they've almost done like a complete retool. Not seen they've done a complete retool of their entire roster, but
Mhm.
I don't think they got worse. I think they got better. Prospects are fun, like they're fun to have, and it's good to have a bunch of prospects. You want to have a strong farm system.
Mhm.
Guess what you're guaranteed in terms of what prospects are going to be? Not a thing. Obviously, you can look back at some of these trades and go, well, why did the White Sox trade Fernando Tatis for James Shields? Because
Mhm.
James Shields was a really good player, and Fernando Tatis was a single A ball player at the time.
Right.
That's why. So, as long as you get your return on the guy that you're trading for, I don't care
Mhm.
what your prospect haul is that you're giving away. Like last year, did it stink for the Red Sox to get rid of 2 top 100 guys
Mhm.
to get Garrett Crochet? Yeah, but guess what? That guy finished second in AL Cy Young voting. And no, I was okay having Carlos Narvaez catch a majority of the Red Sox games instead of Kyle Teal last year. Braden
Mhm.
Montgomery, their other top 100 guy, didn't play major league. Like he wasn't when they traded him. He was a top 100 guy that hadn't really played. Not hadn't really. He had not played professional baseball at any
Mhm.
level up until that point because of an injury.
Sure.
So what they did is they went out and they made a trade that gives them their frontline starter. That is their one. Like they know who their one is. And
Mhm.
their rotation, I don't care what you say. I get it. They had a solid rotation, but last year I think they were banking on Kodai Senga being their one. Right
Right.
now, I'm pretty sure Kodai Senga is their five in terms of that roster. Having a one and knowing where these guys are slotted and what days they're going to start
Mhm.
means a lot to a pitching rotation. It can give you better continuity in a pitching rotation than before. They did a really good job retooling that infield. They got Simeon to play second. Bichette's in there now. They went
Mhm.
and got Luis Robert for almost nothing. Like
Mhm.
Luis Angel Acuna is a good like they consider him a good prospect. Part
Mhm.
of the reason he's a good prospect is his last name. Like he's Ronald Acuna's cousin. And that's
That's good enough.
yeah, that's part of the allure of Luis Angel, and that's fine. But what you went and you got was you got a really good defensive center fielder that when he plays well, like when you
Mhm,
go back and you look at the stats over the past 2 years, they've been down years. But then you actually look at the seasons in two halves, and what it's been is it's been two bad halves and two good halves that make it look like two bad years.
mhm,
So when you get the plus side of Luis Robert, he is a plus bat in your
mhm,
offense as well. So they went out, they retooled. They obviously still have the stars and Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto
mhm.
on that team,
Right.
and those guys are going to continue to be the leaders. But I really like what they did in terms of retooling, because as we talked about last year, their locker room wasn't good. Like their clubhouse
Mhm.
was not good in
Right.
terms of what they had in the culture. And they went back this year. They've spent money. They've spent prospects and they've gotten better around the infield and honestly in terms of a baseball team entirely.
And we're talking in a 3-week period.
Yeah,
I
like this
mean,
was
it's not this. A month ago we'd been sitting there going, "What the hell's the matter with the Mets? They can't keep people. Even Pete Alonso wants to run out of town."
yeah, they got Bichette, Robert, and Peralta in a span of like 5 days.
Yeah.
So like they went bang, bang, bang. So they went and they did like I feel like the Mets fans almost had like this doomsday scenario in their mind early in this offseason when Pete Alonso signed with the Baltimore Orioles. And the Mets corresponding move was to get Jorge Polanco to play first. When you look at that as the 1-to-1, it's not an impressive trade. Trade off. Let me rephrase that because they did not trade the two. It's not an impressive trade off in terms of who you're getting versus who you're giving up. It's
Hmm.
seemingly, but I think in the long haul, it's going to work out really well for New York because it's almost a complete, seemingly like a complete regime change in New York.
Well, it's that, and it's also the fact that they realize they need to make changes.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's you make change for just change.
Yeah,
Doesn't make any difference. This one's different. This one is you got better. I believe you got less drama. I don't. These guys aren't drama guys. Um, and hopefully for them, uh, they can. They've got a roster now that I think can push the Phillies,
yeah.
and it's younger than the Phillies.
And as a Mets fan, like how are you not ecstatic with the moves that you've made and the roster that you've had that you've
Mhm.
now built? Because when you look at the offseason in Philly, what have they done? They honestly probably overpaid for JT Realmuto.
Right.
Bichette was going to be their big addition. They haven't added anybody to that outfield. What they
Mhm.
did is they re-signed Kyle Schwarber, let Ranger Suarez walk, and re-signed JT Realmuto. They haven't made any real additions to that team overall. Not saying that Phillies are going to be a bad baseball team next year, but they haven't done anything in terms of adding to that baseball team. The Atlanta Braves, they haven't done a lot in terms of adding to that baseball team. They had a hole at shortstop. They signed Hyun Kim. Hyun Kim
Mhm.
broke his wrist. He's no longer their starting shortstop. So one of those holes that they filled is now back open again in Atlanta. And then, you want to go cross town to the Bronx. Are you going to take an offseason where it's Cody Bellinger and a bunch of other small moves? Or are you going to take the one that you had in Queens? I'm taking the one I had in Queens.
Yeah, I mean they clearly have done the what, as you said, won the off season.
Yeah.
Um, Winning the off season doesn't mean you're going to win the regular season, but it gives you a hell of a lot better chance.
Yeah. I also would like to point out, like, I think their rotation still has a little bit left to go. There's a lot of rumblings about them and Framber Valdez,
Hmm.
which his market has seemingly dropped off the face of the earth,
Hmm.
dating back to last season and that altercation that he had with his catcher, where the catcher
Hmm.
tried to wave him off. Framber didn't step off. Framber threw a pitch. Trent Grisham hit a grand slam, and then Framber drilled his catcher in the chest plate after
Hmm.
that. That's tanked his market, and New York may be a benefactor of that because for all of the concerns you could have, in terms of like, does he necessarily mesh in the clubhouse? Like, what is this guy like character wise? In terms of who he is as a baseball player, Framber Valdez is a very good pitcher, and so he could still be a very valuable addition to what I think is still an incomplete rotation in New York.
I think if they're not already excited, all they have to do is watch Freddie Peralta pitch one game, and they'll be excited. And I
Yeah,
say that because of this. He's kind of an old school, like a Louis Tiant guy. He's the kind of guy that walks out on the mound and likes to be the showman. And he's got little quirks and all these little things. I mean, I have a tendency, I enjoy watching pitchers, and
Hmm.
I think that the thing that is always, you know, I chuckle at times about it because you know that a guy like Peralta is doing this because he likes a pitching,
Hmm.
and b he just loves to intimidate the other team and get them off, off balance. And he, he's not. Is he a good pitcher? Yeah, he's a very good pitcher. Is he greatest pitcher in baseball? No, but he's going to win for you,
Yeah.
and he's a good clubhouse guy.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
So he was a 17 win guy last year for the Brewers, and I actually listened to him do got to make the media rounds after you've
sure.
been traded to a new team. So I was listening to him. I don't know what podcast it was on. It was just a
Mhm,
clip on X, but I was listening to him talk, and he said there was an understanding with the Brewers in that clubhouse that when they had a day game, like
mhm,
people didn't even like it got to a point to where people didn't even ask. They knew they were going to Freddie Peralta's house after the game to
mhm,
like grill out or hang out or do something.
yeah.
So he's good for the clubhouse too. And as important as the guy is that will be on the baseball field, I think the guy that's going to be off the baseball field is just as, if not more important for the Mets.
There's a funny thing that you brought that up. Guy Fieri from the Food Network, the guy who we know for guys grocery games and drivers, dive-ins and drives, um, did a drop in on Peralta's backyard, deal, and it was you wouldn't have thought that this was a professional football. I'm sorry, baseball player's home. I mean, it was just like your neighbor. It's just like you went over your neighbor. We're having a cookout. Everybody was in the pool having a good time, and and you're just sitting there going, "What a wonderful way to build, team team unity by proving that you don't need to be a star to, you know, to come over and just hang out." And the wives got together, and I mean, it brought them together as a unit, and I think they're going to miss that in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think Milwaukee, in terms of who they have as their manager and Pat Murphy, I
Mhm,
think he'll be able to I think that'll fill the void. I think he's a player's manager. I think he's a really good manager. Um, so I think that'll fill some of the void in
mhm,
terms of what he left in Milwaukee. What I will add is while actually just as we went live, about 8 minutes after we went live,
mhm.
the Rangers made a trade
Okay.
with the Washington Nationals for Mackenzie Gore. It was a 5-for-1 deal. They sent over the prospects Gavin Feen, Devin Fitzgerald, Alejandro Rosario, and I'm not going to try to say that first name, but his last name's Ortiz. He's a first
Okay.
baseman, now in the Nationals, formerly of the Texas Rangers system,
Mhm,
now of the Nationals system. Last name Ortiz, and Jeremy Cabrera, another outfield prospect. In terms of what it was package wise for the Rangers to get. Um, the third baseman Gavin Feen, which is going to be, I believe, the key piece of this trade, was the
mhm.
12th overall pick last year.
That's a good situation. I mean, it's good for the Nats. And Mackenzie Gore, um, I'm trying to. I watched him pitch, and the thing that the little thing. There are two things that bother me about Mackenzie Gore. First of all, there's no there's no downside to his arm. I mean,
Mhm.
his arm is a live arm as there is in baseball. He can throw it whatever. He can throw the pitches wherever you want him to throw the pitches. That's the mechanics are not his problem. His problem is if a guy makes an error and extends the inning,
Mhm.
he pouts. He loses focus. He gets the big innings that he had were in some regards self-inflicted because he was pissed because somebody didn't make a play, or something along those lines. He he needs to become more focused. If they can focus him in Texas, then he's a potential one over time, not now, but over time. He's got that kind of arm. But um, the new regime in Washington, I think they realized, you know what? If we can get a haul for him, he's not going to. There's no time soon he's going to help us win a championship. So send him to Texas.
Yeah. The two things I'll add on to that is you talked about his focus.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also talk about his durability.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, early in the season, really high strikeout guy. Those
Mm-hmm.
numbers faded off in that second half of the year. He went from being a guy that may give you 7 or 8 Ks a night to a guy that's probably going to give you somewhere in the neighborhood 3, 4, 5 strikeouts a night.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
those numbers tailed off with his arm in the later half of the season, which is something that that's fixed through repetition. That's fixed through pitching full seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where that comes from. It's not something that you just magically fix.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of it is, if you're the Nationals and your competitive window wasn't this year or next year, like
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in that neighborhood, it made no sense to hold on to him because this is a guy whose contract is up in 27, and he's not going to have the same trade value going into a season where you may have a lockout, and you probably will have a lockout. So you're not going to get the same trade return going into that 2026 year or going into that 2027 year
Mm-hmm.
that you would as you were to trade him this offseason. He had more value this offseason. Your competitive window wasn't going to open up this season, so there's no reason to hold on to him going into the lockout year where you're not going to get the same value for him as a prospect.
Um, just a quick inside the locker room on the national situation. They cleaned house. Mike Rizzo and they got rid of the manager. Um, I think what the learners, well, not the learners, it's actually Mark Lerner at this point. Uh, Mark Lerner had mentioned on numerous occasions, not just to the front office, but he surprisingly, Mark Lerner is very open to talk to the press and does, and candidly. It's not like he gives you a lot of owner speak. And he said, look, when the baseball people tell me we are close, we'll go out and spend the money. But there's no need for me to go after chasing after Pete Alonso if A, Pete Alonso probably doesn't want to play here, and B, I'm just spending money to buy a bat. He
Yeah.
goes, when the baseball people tell me that we're ready to compete, we'll spend the money. Until that time, again, prove it to me that we're close enough to do that. And I think that has been that's been the learner's mo for a while. The old man Ted, who passed, um, he and Scott Boras were pretty tight, and he offered Bryce a 10-year, $300 million contract. And Scott goes, well, we're going to go to free agency. He said, fine. He said, it ends the week after Thanksgiving. It's on the table. It ends the week after Thanksgiving. Week before Thanksgiving, Boros and Bryce go down to Lerner's home in Palm Springs. They have dinner. They talk about it. They ask him what's the offer, and Ted goes, the offer hasn't changed. It was the same offer that when at the end of the season it was last year, $300 million, 10 years. Scott had visions that Bryce was going to be a $400 million player. Bryce signed a contract, I believe it was for 313 over 13 years. Now, you could argue that he'd take that contract because the team, that he didn't want deferred money, because none of that money was deferred. You could argue that point, but the following year the Nationals won the World Series, and Bryce was in Philadelphia, and then all the wheels started to fall off the Nationals team. Combinations of injuries and knowing that let's get rid of Juan Soto um, and Trey Turner and Scherzer because they're all agents. They're all Boris guys. They're not going to sign. You know,
Mhm.
we've given offers. They've turned them down. So let's if we have to blow this thing up, let's blow it up and and build it back. So that's where they are, and so I don't know where the Braves are at this point. Um, it's going to be an interesting off season. Well, not off season. It's an interesting season coming up very soon, and we'll keep track of it.
Mhm.
Real quick, you just came back from Hawaii,
Yep.
and I'm checking the tournament live scores here, and our boy Scotty Scheffler is one shot off the pace through 13.
Yeah. Yeah.
Min Min Lu Wee. Oh man, I should Min Woo Lee. There you go.
Mhm.
Is at 9 under through 15. Nobody's finished yet.
No.
Vince Watley's at on 16 at 9. Then Siwoo Kim is through 14. He's at 8. Scotty's at 8. John Perry's at 7. Doug Grimm is at 7. Harrison English is at 7. Ooh, 7's big. Zach Bouchot is at 7. And there's more. I have to scroll down to get to the 7s. So a lot of people within two and three shots of this tournament.
Yeah, and it's been relatively easy regardless of what course these guys are playing on. They've all had fairly easy time scoring. But I mean, it almost feels like when Scotty Scheffler gets in a tournament and you see him have a day one like this, odds are he's probably not going to be the leader after day one. That's
Mm-hmm.
typically not the way things go. But he's going to play the same level of golf consistently over the 4 days that
Yeah.
he plays on day one that other people aren't able to play throughout the 4 days. And that's how he wins tournaments. So when he has a day like this, you fully you're going to look at the odds and he's probably going to be minus money when it comes to odds to win the Amex after today.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd recommend betting on him if that's something that you're into or thinking
Mm-hmm.
about, because the consistency that he has shown. I mean, I watched him play a hole earlier today
Mm-hmm.
where he dropped his driver on the tee shot and it went way right and he birdied the hole. Like, it was a par five, but he birdied it. It wasn't an easy birdie, but he did it anyways. Like, you go out and you make a couple good shots after one bad shot, and that's what he does. Like, he doesn't make big mistakes, and when he does make mistakes, they typically don't compound
Mm-hmm.
because of the way that he approaches the game of golf.
There's an old saying, in golf that he's a grinder, right? And normally that's not necessarily something that people want to be called. But Scotty Scheffler called it on himself. He said, "I'm a grinder. I'm a guy who goes out. I forget the shot whether good or bad, that shot was made. I'm now worried about the shot that's coming up." And I think that was what makes Scotty Scheffler so good, is he's got that ability to forget the bad shot that he just hit, or for that matter, the good shot he just hit, and focus on the shot ahead of him. And he's a fun guy to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's just like I I'm not sure. Like, people obviously appreciate the golf that he's played and how
Mhm.
successful he's been,
Yeah.
specifically over these last couple of years. But the approach that he has to the game of golf and the discipline that he has in the game of golf, like, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter how good some of these guys are, the ability to be as good as he's been for as long as he's been. And I would like to preface this by, as good as he's been, as long as he's been, he's still not close to Tiger. Like, that's
Right.
how good he was in terms of what he does. But the consistency he has to the approach, the way that he limits mistakes, it's so hard to do. Like, I think about the peak that Jordan Spieth was at, you know,
Mhm.
way back when, it feels like at this point in time, uh, back when he felt like he was going to win the Masters pretty much every year.
Mhm.
Um, and like, you see where Jordan Spieth's game has gone, and not that it's necessarily like not Jordan Spieth, like, because he still had some of the shots that he has when he was going good, but like, you look at, he's had to make major swing changes. Spieth has. He's coming back better into this year. Ricky Fowler, a guy who's playing better so far in this tournament than he has over the past couple of years, but he's a guy who was at the top of his game and kind of
Mhm.
lost his way and had to go like retrack and refind it.
Mhm.
So the ability to be this good for as long as he has been is a special kind of greatness that you don't get very often in golf.
Uh, my only problem with this tournament is they play it on 3 courses, and
That's so confusing. And
it's hard to say what's going on because at the end of the day, you will those who make it to Sunday, they will have played all 3 courses,
yep.
and I don't know who came up with that cockamamie format, but it makes it hard on golf fans physically there, and on television makes it a nightmare.
Yeah, who's playing where? You don't really know,
Right.
all things considered. So it is tough, and also it like I understand that there can be similarities in courses, and that's
Mhm.
fine and dandy, but you're not all playing the same course. Like if I remember correctly, though, it is 3 days and then the cut, like instead of 2 days and
Yeah.
then the cut.
Mhm.
So there is that. So everybody has to play it, but you're not playing them. Now, granted, you can make the same argument for like morning versus afternoon tee times, but still, then you're playing the same course, stuff like that. You're not, different days can vary, I feel like, a lot more than an afternoon to a morning in terms of scoring
I
average.
was going to ask you about that because for me, let's say, I get my luck of the draw puts me, um, on La Quinta 1, okay?
Hmm.
And that fits me perfectly. So I bolt out to a big lead
Yep.
on the other guy who's, let's say Scotty Scheffler's on 1, and we'll go with Ricky Fowler. You just talked about Ricky. Ricky's on 3, okay? And that's his nightmare.
Yep.
So he shoots at 75 or 76. Scheffler comes in at 65 or 66. He's 8, 9 shots down because the course he played was, the little shop of horrors for him. And Scotty got the luck of the draw of being on the course that was his favorite.
Yeah. And look,
And they're
I,
not the same. I have seen those courses. They are
yeah,
not anywhere near being the same.
no, no. And there's also the added factor of like, well, like you'll get your chance to play the one that fits your game the best. And I get that. And,
Yeah, but if you're 9 strokes behind, you're not going
yeah,
to make it up.
yeah, it's technically a fair argument because everybody's going to technically get a same draw.
Mhm,
But in actuality, like you can be playing fine golf,
mhm,
like as a PGA Tour professional, if you're like 1 to 2 under on a round, is
mhm,
it the best round of your life? No. Is it still really good golf? Absolutely.
mhm.
But if the guy you're in the group with shoots 8 under, then you feel like you're like way behind the 8 ball.
Right.
The same goes for the entire tournament standings. Like,
Mhm,
yeah, maybe you get the same chance to play that course, but golf is such a mental game
mhm.
that when you look up at the leaderboard, you see that big number posted, you want to press and you want to push and you cause mistakes and stuff like that. And that's where you lead to big numbers, and the feeling of needing to come back is significantly harder in golf.
And I don't care that it's a 3-day tournament. I mean, 3-day cut, because it's only human nature that you've been built for a 2-day cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to look up there to your point and see that number and say, I got to make up 6 strokes, or I got to make up 3 strokes, or I got to make some strokes to get to make that manageable. So on the last day of the tournament, I can be in the hunt. Um, and so again, to me, it's some sort of diabolical thing to play these on separate courses. I know over at Pebble Beach, which we're going to in a few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
they have 2 courses.
Spyglass, yeah.
Yeah, and and okay, I get that, but they usually play most of it on one of the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that makes this both at times entertaining and both annoying is this is a pro am.
Yeah.
So you've got golfers out there that shouldn't even be out there, um, and it drags the thing on.
Yeah.
And focus, it becomes very difficult because you've got, if you've got somebody in your foursome who is a star of some sort, the fans are going to want to see that, and it's going to become an issue. So I get what they wanted to do when the Crosby used to be out there, and Bob Hope, which this used to be the Bob Hope Desert Classic.
Hmm.
I understand that was an entertaining situation, but it was hell for the golfers, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah. Yeah. No. The one I think relief that golfers do have, because it's something that they've talked about a lot.
Hmm.
I feel like especially I noticed it last year, is they talk about the speed of the game in
Hmm.
twos versus threes. The one luxury that this tournament does provide them, they're playing in twos all 4 days. So the
Well, that
speed
does
of
help.
the game
Yeah.
is significantly different for them. And to
Hmm.
be honest with you, like there's most of the scores are pretty low. Like you've
Hmm.
got a lot of guys at so 3 under is T65 for this tournament right now. So you've got a lot of guys going low, and I would be remiss if I didn't point a little bit towards the pacing of the tournament. Like the pacing matters in these things, and it can give guys a rhythm that they don't normally get in the first 2 days when they have to play in threesomes.
If they're at that point now, what do you think? The cuts at three at +5?
The cut will probably be because you have to go through 2 more days of this.
Yeah, I'm
You're
just saying if the pattern stays the same.
if the pattern stays the same, yeah, you're talking about a cut that's probably in the neighborhood of like a 6 under, if I were guessing.
6 under.
It probably like
Sheesh.
it's gonna be low
You
because I
could
mean
shoot six under and still get bounced.
you're talking about like when you get to 2 under, that's T83. So you're
Yeah,
talking about the top half's already out. Like that's
yeah.
right now. Right now, if you ended this thing today, your cuts at 3. So
3 under.
yeah, your cuts at 3 under. So if you have 2 more days of golf similar to this, then
Mm-hmm.
you're getting a cut. I think that's at least at 6 under.
Oh, you get balls. That's amazing. All right, Matthew. We are gonna come back tomorrow. We're gonna talk about the playoffs coming up this weekend. There is a huge, huge snowstorm headed in the direction of the East Coast, and
Mhm.
we'll see how that's going to impact anything. Uh, it'll drive up numbers because nobody will have any place else to go but to sit down and watch football.
Yep.
So we'll see how that plays out, and we only got 2 more games to go, folks, before the big one, and we'll downshift our coverage after the Super Bowl to more baseball and golf and other sports. We're not. We'll continue giving everybody what's going on in football, but want everybody to know that we're here to talk about what is important. In the sports world, regardless of what it may be, whatever the topic may be. So anyhow, um, thanks for joining us here on a Thursday afternoon. From Matt, I'm Jim. We'll see you. Man, if I saw